a video side by side with the KLR and the XR. So I'm in the office just getting my KLR ready for me to travel, and I got the XR is going to be staying here during the heavy months of winter. But I thought about the two bikes, and it might be helpful to anybody on the fence, but I think most people know what they want when they're getting a dual sport, because I pretty much knew what I wanted, because I was living in Manhattan when I bought the XR, and I found the KLR to be a little bit heavy sometimes. So during the warmer months I thought about an XR, and you know, I even remember when I went to the dealer, they were like, "You sure you want an XR650?" I mean, and I knew what I wanted, and I after getting the XR, I've been nothing but happy with it. So it's a great bike, easy maintenance, 18-inch wheel on the rear, 21 on the front. It's definitely a more dirt-oriented bike. You got adjustable shocks in the front and decompression, you know, on the rear, or rebound damper. I'm sorry, I'm thinking decompression lever for starting on the old XR600. But anyway, the tire choices are more aggressive on the XR. You're running a 120 width in the rear and a 90-90-21 in the front, which is standard. I put a windscreen on this so I could ride it a little bit longer into the months of winter. One big difference between the KLR and the XR is the XR comes only with like a little tool bag on the back. If you're going to be planning to carry a lot of things, and you want something out of the box, ready to go, straight out the gate, ready to carry stuff, then you're going to want a KLR, because the KLR comes with a standard rack that's really strong. I mean, you can carry, I would say, 75 pounds on this rear rack. You can't get anywhere near that on the XR unless you really attach it to the frame, because this rear subframe on the bottom here, if you look at it, the rear if I go under and look here, the rear subframe, this is a weak member. You know, it's just basically just to hold up your tail light, but it's strong enough if you bolt in, like I drilled through and put the box so it's drilled through here, you know, to the subframe, so it gives you enough strength to carry a 50-pound box on here that I carry boxes going to 14th Street all the time. And this rack has, this is basically, I put the box on here so I carry tools and then put stuff on top of it. Same thing I did on the KLR, because I've experimented with just traveling around with rack only, and then you don't get to carry your tools, so that's not good. But anyway, getting back to the XR, it's 340 pounds, much lighter, 100 pounds lighter than the KLR. So that's another issue too. I knew what I was getting into with the weight on this bike, and I wanted something light for the summer months, for spring, summer, fall. I wanted a light bike that was very simple. It's air cooled, very little to deal with. I mean, valves on this bike are extremely easy to adjust. I mean, if you look up, it's all adjustable. You don't need any shims or anything like you do on the KLR. Now, as far as the XR though, it's definitely more dirt oriented. So if you plan on doing a lot of off-road, there's really, in my opinion, no choice. You got to go with the XR. It's 13 inches of ground clearance. Suspension is much better for off-road, but it's definitely a great city bike too. It's just that I couldn't imagine like running around LA. If you were running around LA and you wanted something that could go on the highway, you'd need a KLR, or even something even more powerful than that. The KLR is 440 pounds, and that's a 2018. The 2023 or 2022 is even heavier. But the KLR has a 17-inch wheel on the rear, 130 width, and a 90-90-21 on the front, same as the XR. It's just the rear wheel is the difference. Like, if you were looking to have dirt-oriented tires, you know, you definitely would want the XR, because the XR has an 18-inch wheel, 120 width, so your choices of dirt tires are going to be much more. both of these bikes are carbureted, but the new KLR is fuel injected. So if you're on the fence about a bike and you don't need something that's light like the XR, then you might lean towards the new KLR because it comes with ABS, fuel injection, just a little bit heavier, but those safety features are nice. And the new KLR with those safety features and not having a carburetor, maybe that's the fence you're looking to fall over and make a decision, because the XR is still carbureted. But what I can say though, the fact that the valves and the carburetor is very easily accessible, it's not a big chore to work on that bike, on the XR. It's very easy to work on. Adjusting valves is a breeze. I mean, I have no issue at all. Like I do the valves on the side of the road or in the parking lot. You know, that's not something I can do on the KLR. KLR, you've got to take this tank off, take your head off, measure your valve clearances, and then you have to get the shim. The shims are going to match up to what you need in your valve bucket. So it's a whole nother ballgame. Both bikes, you're going to want to change the stock exhaust. The stock exhaust is a big, clunky, heavy fucking thing that seems to really put out a lot of heat for a back rider. Because my wife complained about it when she was back riding on the KLR and the XR. When I had the stock exhaust, she was like, it's very hot near my foot. As soon as I changed to a Lex, there was no problem at all, and the bike opened up a lot. Let's see, what else is there? Lighting. Obviously, the XR is a shroud that, you know, it's not a cowling. Like it's just a triple tree mounted light, you know, that turns with the bike. It's a dirt bike, you know. KLR is a wind protection and a cowling so that your light stays straight on the housing. You know, when you turn the wheel, the light's not moving. It's more of a street bike. It's a liquid cooled bike. That's something to keep in mind. Don't see a lot of maintenance issues with the radiator, but I did puncture a hole in the radiator one time, and I thought maybe if I could just get home, I'd be all right. And I was able to get home with a little JB weld. But there was another time where I had a problem with the radiator and I couldn't fix it on the fly. And I thought maybe, hey, I could get home. It was the middle of winter. I thought maybe I could get home, and it didn't happen. The bike, even in the dead of winter, runs too hot to run without a radiator. Even if you're going fast, you can't do that on this bike. You need the radiator to drive it. So that's another issue, like with the XR. There's no radiator. It's just an air-cooled bike. It gets a lot of cooling benefits from the oil being in the frame. I do notice that. Like when you touch this, you can see all the heat coming off of it. It's dissipating the heat on the oil. So the oil is acting as the radiator for the bike in a way, you know, cooling off the engine. Getting back to lighting, you're going to want to change. Both bikes come with shitty light, you know. You're going to want to go upgrade to LED. This is LED, and then the XR is LED. Both bikes, you want to do that. You have to. The tail on both bikes is horrible looking at. I mean, the KLR one stretches all the way down to here. It's just going to get busted off later on. So both bikes, you got to tidy up the tail. It's just a given. But everybody knows that stuff. Let's see, what else can I think of off the top of my head? Top speed, pretty much about the same. But the KLR is definitely better on the highway. There's no doubt about it. I mean, because of the wind protection and the little bit extra weight, it's a stabler bike on the freeway. So if you do a lot of freeway stuff and you are going to carry stuff, a lot of gear, the KLR is the bike for you. If you're living, let's say you're living in New York City, or you're living in, let me think of another, San Francisco, for example, and you don't really have to go outside the city much, the XR is a better choice because of the size of the bike, the weight, jamming it between cars when you're parking, ease of parking, all that stuff is gonna factor in with the XR to be a better bike for you. And the weight, because that's a big factor when you're riding in the city. You want something that's light. Seat height is higher on the XR than the KLR, but this KLR does have a one thing I noticed about the stock KLR, if you see the lean on this KLR, it's the same as the XR. It does not come stock like that. I had to put a Eagle mic raising link in it to get it that way, because what I noticed about the KLR was it always looked like it was about to fall over. So I didn't like it, and I found out that the Eagle mic raising link was going to be the trick to getting the bike to have a proper, bring it up in height a little bit so it would lean better. That's good, but if you're on a hill in the wrong direction, it's a lot of weight to pick up, which it's not on the XR. Like the XR I can just manhandle. KLR I have a little bit more difficulty manhandling. Stator on the KLR is bigger also, so if you're running heated grips, I am running heated grips on both bikes. Oxford heated grip, these are nice and toasty. But the stator has more wattage on the KLR, so you can definitely get the grips warmer. In my opinion, they just feel warmer. Like when I'm touching, like I have them on the same setting, number 3. Yeah, number 3, and these are definitely warmer. So that's another thing. The stator is outputting more wattage. And handguards, the stock handguards on both bikes is ridiculous. Like, you've got to change them. This contraption is because I ride this KLR in winter only, so I have to put on these handguards, and then I cut up the stock to put on the rigid handguard. I drilled it through to give me a nice protection from the wind. These guards are great because they actually come around, so when your hands are in here in this pocket, you don't feel any wind at all. I'm using the same brand of handguards, which these are D-Flex. I got the extra wide wind deflector D-Flex ones on here. They're good enough on this XR, but you still get a little wind coming over. But like I said, this is probably the best I've set up on this KLR. Just cutting up the old guard and drilling it through. But I'm sure you can get something better. Now that looks Rube Goldberg. I mean, it's not. If a German craftsman saw this, he'd be like, "What the hell?" So I'm sure you could get something with much better coverage. I also did a light guard on both bikes because I have had stuff come up and hit my light, and I did have a light get broken one time. So a lot of shit in the road, I do notice though tires seem to last longer on the XR because it's a lighter bike. The KLR, it's a 440-pound bike, so you can go through tires, not horribly, but I run these Kenda K761s. But for example, like these Kenda K270s, I got 4,000 miles on this on the XR, and they barely look like they're worn. If I put that same tire on this KLR, the Kenda K270 wears down right away, right in the middle. So the weight of the bike has a big factor, and the width of the tire. You wouldn't want to put a 120 width tire on it. It's too small for the KLR. It needs a 130. That's fine with a 120. And I would say the bars, put a pro taper on there. That's what I put on both bikes. But you don't necessarily have to. But the stock bars are kind of weak. If you drop the bike, you're going to bend them. Let's see. Air filter, I did a K&N on both of them. Or I'm sorry, I did a Uni on both of them, not a K&N. Uni air filter makes it easy to clean. Did not do a fuel filter. Probably should have, but I did not do a fuel filter. Braking, is stock on these bikes. I do not do sintered brakes though on either bike, because you just wear down your discs. I run regular, you know, pads that are made of organic material so that I don't destroy my rotors. And aftermarket that I've done on here, I'm trying to think of what other aftermarket. Definitely, like I was saying, the exhaust, air filter. You want to do aftermarket. The seats on both bikes are fine. I remember that was the last thing I had to cover. And then there's just one more thing that's a big factor, but it's already a given. People know this. But the seats, both seats on stock bikes are very comfortable. No issues. I can ride for hours and hours on the XR seat or the KLR seat. They're fine. And a back rider says the seat is more comfortable on the KLR than the XR, but the XR is not horrible. The other big giant issue, but everybody knows this, is the fuel capacity on the KLR. 6.1 gallons compared to 3 gallons. So you're looking at double fuel capacity on the KLR. That's a big factor. But like I said, your answer is going to be handed to you if you're buying a dual sport for highway use, and the price is going to be a factor for you. If you're living in a big city where theft of motorcycles is common, you can't spend $10,000 on a machine you're going to be parking in the street. If you're working on a bike or running around the city the way I do, that number, that dollar figure number, 10,000, is too much. It's too tempting for thieves. They'll do a lot of shit to get the bike. And, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning, you'll have people grinding chains and shit. So you don't want to be in that situation. And you still will be with these bikes. But at least, you know, you're not putting $10,000 in the street or more. You know, like I would love to have a Yamaha T700, but, you know, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 in the street is not going to work. So that's going to be another factor for you. But like I said, most of your questions will be answered by yourself in the type of bike that you need. But I would at least help you guys, like looking at these bikes side by side, you get a comparison. Like I ride my KLR through the winter because it's capable. It's got the wind protection, everything I need. The XR with this Zeta windscreen now has become capable. So both bikes are good to go for me. Both bikes support heated grips. Weight capacity is more on the KLR. Fuel capacity, those are factors that come up. I know that I'm doing a lot of highway stuff. I want to be on the KLR. So I hope that's helpful for you guys. Get with me on the comments of what you've chosen for a dual sport, and I would love to know if there's any dual sports that are compared in price to these two, because, you know, like I can always learn from other riders what's out there, what I could take advantage of, and what I can find down the road, of course, you know, for a bike if I have to get a new bike. Because, you know, price is always the factor for me, unless my life situation changes where I live. If I, like, this is the office in Jersey. If I lived over here, I would just come home, park the bike in the garage. A T700 could work. But unfortunately, I live in the city, so, you know, I can't do that. The price of the bike is being governed to me by the work that I have right now. I cannot go up to over $10,000. So that's why I kept like in this range of these bikes, you know, 7,000, 8,000 max, you know, on a KLR. And the new KLR is the same. The Kawasaki did a great job in maintaining the price of the KLR. And Honda, I guess they did a great job with the XR because they kept it exactly the same. They probably won't change it. Suzuki DR650, not bad. I'm just more preferential to Honda and Kawasaki, but I do know the DR650 is not a bad bike too. And if you're worried about height, the DR650 would be a good bike for you. But like I said, if you do a lot of off-roading, you're out in Cali, and you don't do highway much, you don't want the XR. Because if you're riding up in the mountains in San Luis Obispo, you're going to want an XR, not a DR650 or a KLR. The XR is just a better bike for off-road. And I think the DR650, I'm not sure the tire size in the rear. I think it was 17. Yeah, it's 17 and 21 as opposed to 18, 21 on the XR, which is more dirt orientated. All right, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of info to help you in deciding. That's a 2020 XR. This is a 2018 KLR. It's pretty beat up, but it's running great. I mean, you can hear that thing. I mean, it's just beautiful. This bike has, this XR has 15,000 miles and this has 30,000. This KLR. Top end's been done on it though. And the valves. So, because I did have some problems with an exhaust valve that burned out on me at around 18,000 miles. And it's probably because I didn't do the valves. Because, like the other day, I was having trouble starting the XR. Hard starting tells you right away you got a problem with your exhaust valve. And my exhaust valve was out of spec, and I just quickly adjusted it, and I was good to go. You're not going to do that on a KLR. But since the valves are done with shims and shim buckets, they should stay in spec. They shouldn't go out of spec. They'll normally stay the way they are, so you won't have problems with them. They don't go out of spec as much as adjustable valves do, so that's one good thing. But out of the box, both bikes are pretty good. Just, you're not going to have like a KLR where you buy it out of this dealership. You've got a rack ready to go. You do not come, the XR does not come with a rack. You've got to get something, but it's not going to cost you much to figure out something. Like, I just put that Pelican case on there, and it's very strong. You know, I got washers, and it's bolted through the subframe. This thing is not going anywhere, and it's very convenient for me. Both bikes are 5 gears, so you don't have a 6 gear for, you know, I don't know if that really makes a difference, but just something to keep in mind. All right, everybody. See you on the next one.